So Richard Nixon declared, "I am not a crook." Christine O'Donnell, a few decades later, declared, "I am not a witch." And in this election cycle, it seems that many Republicans are declaring some variation of, "I am not a scientist."
I'm not a scientist. I am interested in protecting Kentucky's economy. I'm interested in having low-cost electricity.
I would leave it to the scientists to decide how much, what that means, what are the consequences.
I'm not qualified to debate the science over climate change.
I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't think science does either.
That talking point on climate change was mocked this summer by President Obama.
I'm not a scientist either, but I've got this guy, John Holdren. He's a scientist. I've got a bunch of scientists at NASA, and I've got a bunch of scientists at EPA.
New Jersey Congressman Rush Holt, who, by the way, is a scientist, a rocket scientist, had this to say on the floor of the House in May.
Yesterday, Speaker Boehner said he was not qualified to debate the science of climate change, but he was confident that all plans to deal with climate change would hurt jobs and our economy. Mr. Speaker, I'm a scientist, but that doesn't uniquely qualify me to debate climate change. As members of Congress, we rely on the expertise of others to inform our decision-making. And I agree with the overwhelming consensus among scientists. The climate is changing, largely as a result of human activities, and we can and must act now.
And joining me now is Democratic Congressman Rush Holt, one of the very few, maybe only scientists in Congress. You have or had one of the all-time great political bumper stickers, and it was "My congressman is a rocket scientist," and I always thought that was one of my favorites.
Good to be with you, Steve. Thanks.
So this talking point, and I've noticed this, McConnell, I was watching the Kentucky debate the other day. McConnell brings this up in the debate whenever climate change comes up. I've noticed countless, it seems to be increasing in its usage, this "I am not a scientist" refrain. What do you make of that? It seems like obviously a way of avoiding the question. Do you think
it's a dodge.
Do people buy it, though?
I don't think so. You mentioned this bumper sticker. When I was elected to Congress, some of my constituents, knowing that I'm a physicist, they made it up. My campaign didn't make this up. And I started seeing bumper stickers around saying, "My congressman is a rocket scientist." And at first, I thought somebody was messing around with my message, and any politician doesn't want that, but it was kind of cute. But really what it was a call by the constituents for reasonable thinking. That's what they were saying. They want people to think like scientists. Not that they thought a knowledge of differential equations was going to help me do my job in Congress, but they believe and should believe that scientists have a reverence for evidence. Well, and that's what's so infuriating. That's why I think citizens are disappointed when they hear Ryan and McConnell and Jindal and I think Shelley Capito, Senate candidate in West Virginia, and just a long list, Senator Rubio, use this "I am not a congressman, I am not a scientist" ruse.
Right, and I mean, people have pointed out when you start talking about jobs or taxes or whatever, you don't hear "I'm not an economist." You hear plenty of opinions about that. I want to put up on the screen the latest public opinion polling on this. This is, I think, from Gallup a few months ago, and this is basically humans mainly contributing to climate change, to global warming. And you see Democrats, it's pretty well accepted. Independents right in the middle. Republicans still running under 50%. When you talk, Congressman, to your colleagues in the House, to Republican colleagues in the House, do you hear something different from them than they say in public on this subject?
A little bit, yes. I mean, clearly what's happening here is these are people who know they can't come out and say there is no climate change because there's just too much evidence. They can't come out and say humans are not affecting our globe because there's just too much evidence. And so they use this dodge and say, well, I'm not a scientist. Paul Ryan isn't a lawyer, so maybe he shouldn't, on Ways and Means Committee, do anything about tax law. Come on, we do depend on expertise of others, and we should have a reverence for evidence. If you don't think on the basis of evidence, then you have nothing but ideology or wishful thinking in its place.
No, I'm trying to imagine the Congress where you're only allowed to vote on something that's in your professional specialty.
Right.
It would be a different place. So, big picture here. I mean, we've been just stalled in this. You know, tried to get the cap and trade bill through a few years ago. That didn't work. Everything's been stalled in Washington, but everything's been stalled in politics when it comes to climate change. Can you see anything that's going to change that in the next few years?
Well, sure. Most Americans feel the effects now, whether it's drought, wildfires, floods, superstorms, and the evidence is there. It's not. I mean, you know, nothing in life is ever absolutely positively certain. You use probabilities. Scientists are really comfortable using probabilities, and it is highly likely that humans are changing the climate, and we should do something about it because it will be costly in lives and dollars. And people are, you know, are feeling that at home now, and so they won't allow people to use the Dodge. But more important, beyond climate change, you know, if you don't have a reverence for evidence, you only have ideology. And that's not a way for us to make decisions about you know, international epidemics, to make decisions about kind of anything that's going on.
Rush Holt, the rocket scientist, congressman, and he is retiring from the House after 16 years, we should say. Thank you for joining us, though. One of the good ones there. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, up next, we will pivot from politics to one of the morning's biggest news stories, new developments in the search for a missing Virginia college student. And still ahead, Doonesbury creator Garry Trudeau right here on this set talking about all kinds of things. We're very excited about that. Big morning. We're juggling a lot. Stay with us.